All right, so you know what? We're just going to do an invocation before we go any further. So I'm just going to ask you to close your eyes for a moment. And know that this is a space of exploration. It's a space of curiosity. It's a space for insight. It's a space to feel. And so whatever it is that you brought with you today, whatever brought you here, the invitation I'm hearing is to lay it down. To lay it down, the message I'm hearing is on the altar. And you get to choose what it's an altar of. But to lay it on the altar of your soul. Meaning to say whatever it is, you don't have to carry it alone. What I'm hearing is that, especially around this power thing, and who knows when we use the word power, what comes up. But sometimes it's our heavy burden that comes up. And so whatever that thing is that you've been carrying, that you can lay that down. And I'm also hearing that whatever the hope or dream or vision is, that ball of wonder, that you can lay that down as well. To be carried, to be supported, to be infused with love. And my intention for us all tonight is that we receive what we need, even if we don't know what that is. That we open up and that our whole being can be cleared to receive whatever that is that we need. And I know we are blessed, and so it is. Beautiful. So tonight's about power, how we wield it, how we step into it, and especially how it influences us if we are someone called to be a way shower. I had this beautiful woman named Revital that I do some coaching with. She's in Israel. She's brilliant. She asked me about who I look up to, or if I wanted to be someone or emulate someone as I grow and mature, who might that be? And the first people that came to mind were kind of contemplatives, like Richard Rohr, or Adyashanti, people that are like really deeply seated in themselves. The second group that came up, and you can turn the levels down.
Is that too hot?
You can turn it down. Oh, okay. That would be the input to the camera versus the output for the room, but it's all good. So the first group were contemplatives and people that are really like seated in themselves. But then the next group, I thought of people that are very avant-garde and edge pushers and envelope openers. People like Pina Bausch, who is a very cutting-edge modern dancer and had an amazing vision. There's another guy, Pete Rollins, who is this philosopher and theologian that is very naughty in the best way possible. Or even Elon Musk, who I think creates from the future. And so I know that the people that I'm interested are in those camps, and that the people that my tribe are usually interested are also pushing the edge somewhere. And I also know that my tribe are people that are called to push the edge somewhere. And so when we are pushing the edge, whatever edge that is, that's where we're wielding influence and wielding our power. And so then the question comes, are we doing that effectively? Are we doing it benevolently? Are we doing it in the most expansive way possible? Or are there things that hamper it, that dampen it, that close us in, that tether us to an old way of being? And that's what I want to explore tonight. The bulk of my work is, when I work with clients, is in the field of marketing. And I have a body of work called Tribal Marketing, where I look at how people's foundational upbringing influences who they're meant to serve today, and use that to understand how to position and market them. And that's one part of the work. But the other part is this leadership development side of things. And these evenings are in that camp. This is where we take these underlying underbelly issues and we just tease them apart as best we can. I never know what I'm going to be sharing when I show up. I know a theme ahead of time, and that's about it. So my greatest hope when I'm here is to learn right along with everybody else. So that is, I think, enough to set the stage. Let me do one more check-in with our tech team back here, see how we're doing, and we're going to dive in.
Yeah, man. Unfortunately, they're saying the audio is super low.
All right, so there is an audio output to camera on the board, and that should be brought up. It's just underneath.
I'm line level, so I can't control anything. I can only take whatever you give me.
All right, so one moment, everybody.
Yeah, sorry about this. I don't really know this stuff. That is what needs to go up?
That's the monitor out. There we go.
Got it.
So that should help. So live streamers, we're going to check in one more time. How are we doing? Did that help? Are we louder? Can you hear me better? Let's see. We're testing. Are we good? Not so good? Kind of, sort of? Did that change anything?
Yes.
It did?
Yes.
Good. All right. Thank you, live streamers. Again, we have a new tech team tonight, so we're just working stuff out. So thank you for bearing with us. So when I thought about power, it made me think about when I first started saying yes to my calling. Because I knew from the time I was a little kid, like I'm not your standard guy. I'm not here to do the standard thing. I'd look at people in 9-to-5 jobs and be like, nope, that's not me. And I would always be looking for like those different jobs. I remember going to a concert and seeing roadies and being like, hey, how do you get those jobs? Like, that's different. Not that I like had a life aspiration to be a roadie, but you know, it was different. And it's like, not this, like, how do you end up in one of those jobs? And so I was always looking for where these different expressions of work and contribution could be found. And I started my spiritual journey in my 20s, but then I went into some tech startups and ended up at Microsoft. I think somehow the universe was like, you need to at least experience the behemoth, right? So I did it and eventually left, and that led me to what I do now. But when I really started this work, there was something in me that knew it would take off on some level. And my fear when I started was that it would all go to my head, that all the success would go to my head, and I'd climb to some mountaintop and end up all alone, because frankly, I was a blowhard, right? That I was filled with hubris. That was a real fear for me for a good many years, that some part of my ego would hijack me in any success I had. And for that, I employed support of a couple people. Siddiqui, who's actually in the house, and my spiritual teacher who I'd been with for 20 years. And I sat them both down separately and said, hey, look, I'm going to say yes, like that big spiritual yes. But I'm scared that I might go down this dark path. And I need your commitment that if you see me losing myself, that you call me on it. I just needed some people that I could trust to tell me the truth no matter what, that I knew were in my back pocket, keeping an eye on things. And sure enough, Sid once overheard part of a conversation that the part alone was a little disconcerting. And she pulled me aside. She's like, hey, what was going on there? And when I described it, it was okay, but it was the greatest thing. Because I was like, oh, she's really listening. She's doing her job. Awesome. And a few years ago, my spiritual teacher on a call, she's like, look, you know that thing, you don't have to be worried about that anymore. Like, you can trust yourself. And I knew when she said it, like, oh yeah, I can, right? So that's the first piece I want to lay down. When people say the big yes, one of the fears is, oh, some part of my ego is going to hijack me in my expression of power, and I'm going to move into that expression of power that often we look out in the world. We have Trump here as like the greatest magnified example of somebody just losing themselves in it. So that's the first piece. And the fear there was really being alone. The next piece was like, okay, that's handled. Was the fear of growing too fast. If I evolve too fast, if I grow and the people around me aren't growing at the same speed, I might outgrow my world. And then again, I would be alone. And sure enough, almost 4 years ago now, I was essentially like ejected from San Francisco and my life there. That one was more like, you've done everything you need to do there. Off you go. And my fear there too was, oh gosh, I might end up alone if I do that, right? And for those of you that are in any romantic partnership, there can be that concern of like, is my spouse growing with me or not? And if I keep growing and they don't, then what's going to happen? So those were some of the things I thought about when I initially started unpacking power, is the fear of growth and being alone. And I think that's a big theme I see a lot in the tribe. Because my tribe are people that are meant to be way showers, meant to be cutting edge, meant to be out front with the sickle, cutting down the brush, paving the path. We are not meant to be followers. And that can be a lonely path sometimes until you start to really step into your role. And then you see that, oh, there are a whole cadre of way showers to your left and right. But you only see them until you actually take your spot. But the thing I really want to explore tonight is the relationship between power and surrender. Because I don't think we can authentically talk about power without talking about surrender. And to me, that's the place where the biggest fear of power lives. A few years ago, I kept getting this message, Jeffrey, you're here to teach people about holy power. You're here to help make power holy. And I was like, okay. And what exactly is holy power? And some of you heard this definition before, but it came so immediately and clearly that holy power is the complete expression of divine truth in real time without hesitation, manipulation, or control. The complete expression of divine truth in real time without hesitation, manipulation, or control. And that is surrender. That is surrender. Surrender to me isn't about giving up. I think that's often a misconception about what surrender is. I surrender, I give up. Surrender is about surrendering into something. Like when you surrender into a body of water. Right? You move into it and you surrender yourself to it. And so to me, the piece around surrender and power is we are continually being asked to be used. To be used, to be used, to be used. And those of us that have said that big holy yes, that big yes to the life mission. The concern is, how big can my yes be? And if I fully say yes, then are there any guardrails? What if my life just takes off and I'm not prepared for it? Am I ready to go? And to me, that is one of the greatest places of fear and concern around power as it relates to saying yes to your life's mission. Because tonight was about purposeful power, right? How to say that yes without losing yourself in your success. And so I want you to think about if you really took the guardrails off from your yes, or any tether you have to the way life is right now. My friend and coach, Revital, saw this vision of little kids that have those harnesses on them when you take them to Disney, right? And that tether, and they can kind of run around and they're kind of free, but, you know, oh, hi, Mom. And I think a lot of us have those tethers, right? We have those places where we're like, oh, can I really let myself go? Or is there an edge after which I'm going to back off? So I want you to think about your life. Hi, sweetheart. And think about if you really took the guardrails off, what fear comes up? What concern comes up? Where does the wobble start to get introduced? Because that, to me, is the fundamental place where this power inquiry sits for each one of us. So I actually want to hear, normally I do Q&A and bring people up here a little later, but I'm going to do it earlier today. So I want to hear from a few of you where you see, like, oh, that's kind of the edge after which it gets a little scary. Who's willing to share? Thank you, Hope. You know, sometimes there's the physical yes, and then there's the energetic yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I'm willing.
Yeah, thanks.
Yes.
So this is Hope. Hope actually is just beginning to help us out with these events, which is awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you've been coming to these for a good while.
Yeah.
So I know for you, you're in this place of exploration right now, right? So there's lots of possibility, but also might be places where you're like, oh, can I go there? Can I do that? And I'm wondering for you, when you think about like really letting go of the tether, where the fear comes up.
Yeah. Well, that's a fancy way of saying it, exploration. I like that. And that's totally true. Thinking. I definitely am very aware that I have a fear of failure. That's for sure. So there's that, which also ties in with, starting something and being really excited about it and then being wrong about that too. And then also, more fear, just limiting beliefs as far as, like I was just trained really to survive in life, like make money, so therefore be in the job where you're gonna make the most money per hour. And, but then when I've done that before and it's not fulfilling me in any other way, it's like, okay, where do I go from here? Mm-hmm. So it's just been a real, as I'm exploring different places I can say yes, the fear and those limiting beliefs are highly wrapped around making the most money during the whole time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hear that, and I also hear making the wrong choice.
Yeah, and I am too. I'm very, very afraid of making the wrong choice. So afraid,
Yeah.
freakishly afraid
Yeah.
of making the wrong choice.
Yeah. So to me, I think that's the biggest thing I'm hearing for you, which is if I say yes in a small way, then it's a small choice. And if it's a wrong choice, it's small consequences, is the math,
Exactly.
right? But if I say a big yes and say yes in a big way, and then I found out it's the wrong choice,
Exactly.
whoo, that's a big mistake, right? So what's the fear? Let's go one step further. If you make the big mistake, the grand mistake, I think it's the right thing, and I go whole hog into it, and it blows up, and then it turns out it's the wrong thing. What's the worst thing that could happen?
You know, I've recently, like in the last year, I've kind of hit some of the biggest lows of my life, and for me, it's just you know, I don't have any family. I don't have any like I don't have.
so
It's
then
a
what would
financial
happen?
thing. It's like I would be homeless. I would be on the streets. I would have like people would lose respect for me. And I would have like no love in my life because I would just be trying to climb out of the hole, you know, just trying to put my life back together.
Good. I think it's really good to know, like, where does the psyche take you? So this brings up the relationship between power and trust. This night's been about power, but I got to tell you, the whole time, as I've been thinking about it, I've been thinking about a lot about betrayal lately, and how we betray ourselves as the first step in betrayal. And so what I'm hearing in this, and there's a huge relationship between betrayal and trust, right? Can I trust myself, or am I going to betray myself? Can I trust another? Can I trust the universe? And of course, if I feel like other people have smacked me down, or the universe has smacked me down, it's hard to say yes to anything and do it safely, because it's like I keep getting smacked by it, you know, and then we have to peel back the onion to the place of self-betrayal. And where do we say yes to things that we're not really yes to? And so here's what I'm hearing for you in relationship to this idea of power. One is, I'm going to make the wrong choice and it will devastate me, right? That's the big gorilla.
That's like 1,000%. That's the only place my mind goes immediately.
Yeah. So I want you to just take a moment and see if this was meant to teach you something. That's where I want to go. What might it be? Because it's very easy to look at these and go like, oh crap, this is bad, this is wrong, I want to get rid of it, right? Don't want that to be so. Please make it be anything other than that. But in my experience, everything's a doorway, right? Everything is showing the way. And damn it, this one too.
No, that's great.
Right?
I want that.
And so let's play a bit, and then we're going to see how this lands in the room. In terms of how this relates to you really inhabiting your contribution in this world. 'Cause you're a powerhouse, right? But you're like a powerhouse with a plug, just like looking for an outlet to plug into, and scared that it's going to be the wrong one and it's going to blow all your fuses.
That's it. That's
Right.
it.
So this is really about decision making and choice making, right? Which I think a lot of expression of power is, and a lot of the expressions of power in the world that we see that are scary or that seem awful are expressions of power that are coming from a very wounded place of choice, right? So I want you to feel into the part of you that really doesn't trust you,
Totally.
right? That younger part of yourself that is like looking up at the big hope going like, I don't know about her. And I'm not sure she's going to choose the right thing. And every time you're about to like plug in, that part goes, yeah, right? In your family of origin, if you had if you had been able to really follow what you know, what kind of trouble would that have gotten you into?
You know, it's kind of endearing because I've always had so many interests, and but I remember the first job that I ever wanted. I was seriously in like second grade. I was like, I'm going to be a lawyer when I grow up. I'm going to be a powerhouse lady lawyer, because I'm like, I was aware of like how diplomatic I am at that age, and that is my number one gift to like to a curse in a way, and always see every side. So, and then it went from that to, you know, wanting to be a writer. And then I had somebody tell me that, like, that's silly, you can't make money, to wanting to be a singer. And then, you know, so there was just a lot of interests and just really lively things. Like, I knew that my life had a big purpose. And I grew up in Idaho, and all my girlfriends were married at 18, 19, 20,
Yep.
had 5 kids by the time they were 25.
Yep.
When I left Idaho, I was the only person in my whole community without kids and that
Yeah.
was single.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've always known that there was a big purpose out there, and there's a lot of things that there are so many, and that's where like not trusting myself comes from, is because I've had so many things that excited me, and then
Oh, okay.
that voice always came in.
Yeah.
And some of them were influenced, you know.
Yep.
I was influenced to turn my head the other way by some, but as I've gotten older, I take responsibility for that, and I would love to find the point to pluck that weed.
Yeah. Well, here's the first thing I'd say. When I used to teach life purpose work with Tim Kelly, and we worked with younger people, this is a little different now. This is a decade ago, and I think the universe has changed a lot. But when we'd work with younger people, and they would, and in that mechanism, we get permission from the conscious mind to talk to something outside of the conscious mind that might know the purpose and tell it to you under the right conditions. People would connect with this source of guidance, and the guidance would essentially say, you're not ready to know yet. And part of it, and when they would ask why, the answer would come back, oh, you're still meant to explore. You're still developing skills and tools by dabbling here and dabbling there and dabbling in this other place, all of which is going to be necessary for the purpose down the line, right? But I still get a part of you that just screams with terror for your survival around choice making.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like anyone that knows me knows that.
Okay.
And it's good to hear it from you.
Yeah. First I just want to ask you to listen to that voice. And there's a reason there's a reason you're in this seat and like you energetically raised your hand, because this voice wants to be heard in a new way tonight. And so I'm wondering if you just tune into it and ask it, what don't you know about it? What would it say? Just listen.
Basically, like asking what it really is afraid of.
Here's what I want you to ask it.
Okay.
You have assumptions about this part of you. It's been in you for a long time. You're very familiar with it. But there's some truth about this part that you don't know.
Okay.
And I might just tune into this voice and ask first, like, why is it trying to get your attention tonight? Because,
You know, right away, but I don't know if this is just because it's like, I am hearing this and seeing this everywhere, but like the answer is to take action. Like the answer is to just take action. You know, you always hear that taking action is the way to dismantle fear. And I was even out in public the other day, and there's a little sticker on the ground, and I'm always like picking up trash on the ground, and I pick it up. I didn't know it was a sticker, but I turn it around, and it said, "Fear or action dissipates fear," and it's just like popping up everywhere. But I don't know if that's
Good.
quite the
So
answer we're looking for.
here's what I want to ask then.
Yeah.
What does this part of you need to feel safe
Yeah, that's a good
with you taking action, even if you're scared?
I would love to know.
Just listen.
Yeah.
It's not in your head.
I almost, like as I'm listening, it's not the right voice I'm listening to because I feel angry that that answer is somewhere in me because it's been such an issue, and I'm feeling like, you know, when you don't trust yourself, you have a lot, you resent yourself. So that's coming up for me.
All right.
I'm trying to get past that.
All right. So that's the block in between
Yeah.
where this voice is. All right.
Yeah.
Got it.
I mean, I will spend more time listening.
Yeah. Let me just tune in here. All right. So let's play this game. What does the anger want?
I think the anger wants just, I feel security, I feel freedom, just like the freedom to play almost, you know? And if you know a little bit of my story, I know where that comes from. It just comes from, I've been working full-time hours since I was 14. So and I can't change that. So I've been working since your last meeting last month. Like, whenever I notice that I'm in that victim mode, like getting up, I know where I need to be now from that chart you were drawing about getting up into mystery. And then there's a block because of this power, where this power is coming from.
So here's the piece I want to invite you to explore. I want to invite you to explore the part of you that's the victim laying down on the tracks. Because that's in the way, that's in between you and really knowing what's true. So I'll give you a little story. I used to work with this woman, Suzanne, and love Suzanne, God bless Suzanne. And when we started working together, she had major life upheaval. Left her husband, came out of the closet, moved across the country, started a new company, and had empty nest syndrome all at once, right? And she'd show up on my doorstep in a lot of different states, sometimes kind of manic, sometimes crying, and I started to notice I would get anxious before she'd come over to work. And I was getting pissed. And I was not very great back then about having really straightforward communication. And I did a piece of parts work to talk with the part of me that was pissed. And I thought this part of me was just going to rail at her, right? Oh no. This part was like, she's just being a freight train. You're the one laying down on the tracks, you know? And I was like, oh, right? And like, I hadn't set any boundaries. I hadn't said what was okay and not okay. I hadn't expressed my concern for our working relationship. None of that. I was the one laying down on the tracks. And so it wasn't until then that I realized, like, oh, and I was pissed, right? That anger, that really, there was something I wasn't attending to, and I wasn't expressing. And so I think this anger is the way in for you, because there's some place where that self-trust mechanism isn't fully dialed in and locked in, which makes discerning what to plug into really, really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah? And we can talk more, but the place I want you to explore is how do you use your victimization, which moves into anger and resentment, as the way to find where you're bypassing your truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Good. Because as you do that and you start to shore that up, then I believe it's going to be much easier for you to know what sockets to plug into and trust, because you're plugged into your trust mechanism.
Yes.
Cool?
Yes.
Helpful?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
And when at the end of your story, did you end up just verbally taking your power back, like
Yeah, I said,
setting your
"Hey,
boundaries?
I'm getting really anxious, and here's why. And for our working relationship, here's what I need."
Okay.
You know, I said, "Look, if you're in a state and you just need to sit on my front stoop and meditate for 5 minutes before you knock, great. But here's what I need for our working relationship." You know, and she was great. She totally heard it and was awesome. Good.
Thank you.
You got it. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay. Okay, we're just going to unpack this piece. So there is this amazing relationship between trust and surrender and power. Because we can't surrender without trust. And we can't really fully move into our power without surrender. And so it's this trifecta, or this relationship, that I want to explore just a little bit more deeply. And then live streamers will see what questions you have online, see what questions are here, and do a couple more hot seats, and we'll be good to go. And before I go into trust, surrender, power, okay, there's like a diamond-shaped thing here. Hope you asked me to bring the whiteboard back, and I didn't. I'll have to do that. So there's trust, surrender, power, anger. Those are the 4 elements I'm seeing in this diamond-shaped image. So I want to start with trust and anger, and trust and resentment, and trust and rage. And then we'll go into trust and surrender, and we'll end up in power. Lately, I've been getting this message in a lot of different places, like, all right, Jeffrey, you're doing fine, you're doing great, but like, time to let it rip, right? Like, let the sucker go already. And so I've been exploring some of my own power wounds, and some of the stuff in my history that might be the tethers that say, not so fast, not so quick. And I find that abuse of power, or the incorrect expression of power, happens in one of a few things. Either our own expression of power, where we abuse power, people abusing power towards us, or us witnessing the abuse of power. So for example, if you grow up with mom and dad where your dad beat your mom repeatedly and you witnessed it. Never laid a hand on you, but you witnessed it. Where you get these templates of what the expression of power is, and then you go, I don't want that, that's not me, and we unplug, right? When I was in 7th grade, I moved to a new school. And I went to parochial school in the suburbs of Grand Rapids, Michigan. Now, the summer before school started, is when I realized I was gay. And I had a big sister, Kim, who's amazing, and I loved her. And so I kind of grew up with her, about 3 years ahead of my chronological age. And she was getting into like new wave and punk rock. So I became a little goth punk rock kid. I wore all black. I shaved my head except for a square on top. It hung down to about here. My favorite band was Shock Therapy, a garage band from Detroit. Their song was "Hate is just a four-letter word." And I would rage to it in my basement bedroom. And it was a result of not being able to authentically express what was cooking for me, which was, oh crap, I realize I'm interested in men, and where that came from, that meant I was burning in hell for all of eternity. And I think this was a way to express my anger and frustration and my difference without saying like, I'm gay and I'm pissed, right? Now, I was also 6'2" by the time I was 14. So when I entered 7th grade, by the time I was 13, I was 6'2". And like most of the kids were like 4 foot something, 5 foot nothing, right? But it was a really sheltered parochial school in the suburbs in Michigan. And so I was this like weirdo anomaly. I had one friend, Sue Branderhorst. We smoked behind the tool shed out back. And all the kids called me Fairy. Hey, Fairy. You know, and these days, I guess maybe 10 years ago, it would have been like, hey, fag. And I didn't know if it was because they knew I was gay or because it's just a derogatory thing for somebody who's different. But it really hurt. And I would never chase them. They would say it from 30 feet off because I was a lot bigger than them. And I never wanted to give them the justification or you know, and chase after them. But I would remember. Every single one, every single time, I had a steel memory. And I don't care if it was the next day or 5 days later, when we passed in the hallway, got a sock in the gut, barrel over, and I would just keep walking. And about 2 hours later, I'd be in detention. And I had 47 detentions in 7th grade. So I didn't really think much about that as it relates to anger and rage, but as I've been doing some inner exploration with my inner angsty teenager, I've come into contact with this archetype in me that feels like a sniper. Far off, cool, calculating, can take you out. Now, what I know is that energy is potent. And as I've been exploring it, it's rage funneled into revenge. And as I've looked at a lot of masculine expressions of the abuse of power, I see that pattern a lot, where you can just read the anger in somebody's eyes, right? But they're cool, calculating politicians or business leaders. And I've been exploring it because I know that if I'm meant to serve some of those people, I need to be able to meet them. And so I need that energy out of the shadows and integrated back into my life. And even right now, talking about it, like, whew, I can feel the potency of it, right? And so that's the first thing I want to invite you to look at is where might there be buried rage or unexpressed rage or anger that, you know, might be buried in the Siberia of your psyche, might be someplace far off. But if you connect to it, and the place you might look even for starters is at your adolescence. Because oftentimes it's that adolescent rebel part of us. It's like, fuck you. that in polite society, as an adult, we don't touch anymore. In fact, when I started looking at this energy, I was like, where is this alive in my life today? And I was like, oh, it's when I drive. That's where it gets expressed. You know, I'm a cool, calculating, aggressive driver. And I'm like, I wonder how my driving might shift as I do this work. But that's the first place, because it's a place where you must betray yourself. So when we talk about trust being over here, surrender being over here, power being over here, and anger or rage being down here, this is about the anger and rage as it relates to trust. And so the first place where I feel like the anger and rage comes for most of us is in self-betrayal, where we can't trust what's true for ourselves or express it authentically or easily, right? I couldn't have readily in the 80s in Michigan been like, hi, I'm gay, right? We went to church twice on Sundays and every Wednesday. So that's the first piece that I feel like needs to be shored up. In order for the trust to really come back online. Because wherever the self-betrayal is still living is the place where we can't trust our yes and can't trust our no and can't trust others and can't trust the universe. So the first thing I'm going to invite you to do is to look at any place where there is victimization. Those people, they're doing it to me. Any place where there is anger or rage that's been sitting around, any place where you're pissed at the other, because that's telling you, oh, at some point in my life, I wasn't able to just say what's true. And that turns into frustration, which turns into anger and resentment and potentially rage, whether or not it goes expressed. So that's the first place, I think, to explore and to see, oh, is there anything there for me to clean up and any forgiveness for me to do with myself or potentially others, but certainly with myself, so that I can really step into trust. Trust of self first and foremost, because we cannot have power if we don't trust ourselves. We can't express it safely. We can't wield the sword and know that we aren't going to like, oops, sorry about your head, right? Forgot to go to samurai school. We can't do that if we aren't in trust. So that's the first place to step into, is to move from places where we are wobbly with our yes and no, wobbly with our boundaries in life, wobbly with our willingness to really claim the life we want, because the trust isn't really, really count-onable. It's not solid. When we move into trust, and really move into trust of ourselves, that's the beginning of potentially expressing authentic holy power, because it's where we can move into surrender. We cannot trust the divine, we cannot trust this universe if we don't trust ourselves, right? And the reason is, when we hear something, what happens when we don't trust ourselves is we second guess what we hear. And so we sometimes say yes and sometimes say no, or more often we say yes and then we back away from that yes, right? We start with a yes and then we second guess the very thing we said yes to, and then we muck up the whole works. And then we blame the universe and say, I can't trust it. I'm told it's the right thing to do, and then I do it and it ends up blowing up in my face. And I'll say, yeah, but did you stay connected to the yes? Did you stay listening to what you were meant to do? Or did you say yes and then get wobbly with it? I just had a client email me a dialogue he had with his guidance about this very thing, where he was like, why can't I break the 10K mark? Right? You have somebody who's sitting right around 7 or 8K a month pretty consistently. Why can't I break the 10K thing? And the answer was fierce and direct. And it was, look, we tell you what to do, but you never stay on course. You start, and then you second guess. You start, and then you go this way. You start, and then you have shiny object syndrome. You do not stay the course, right? And I would suggest that you cannot stay the course if you don't trust yourself. You cannot trust the voice of the universe if you aren't plugged in here, right? And you can't be plugged in here if you're still in places where you are in self-betrayal and resentment and anger. So we clean that up. We move into this place where we're really plugged into ourselves and can trust ourselves deeply. Okay, and there's a piece. So in the first place, the anger place, that's about self-betrayal. When we move into self-trust, we actually have to move into what I would call purposeful betrayal, which is betrayal of others' expectations of us, of what we are supposed to do with our lives, what's socially acceptable in our social group or in our family, in our community. Every time we say our full yes to ourselves, we're unplugging from the external approval matrix, right? And so that's a form of betrayal, and I would call it purposeful betrayal. It's betraying some of those old unwritten agreements that we all pick up along the way. But as we do it, we become these really fiercely congruent humans that are so honorable with their word, not just with the other, because a lot of people in my tribe are honorable with their word with others, but not so honorable with their word with themselves. And that's where we move into becoming deeply honorable with our word with ourselves. And that's the place where trust really gets cemented, where we I'm absolutely countable with me. When that happens, then surrender becomes safe. Because every time we try to move into surrender, until then, surrender is scary. Because it feels like the surrender is going to smack us down. Like we're going to say yes, and then it's going to somehow blow up in our face. And so it feels really unsafe, and we want to hold on to this sense of control. That I know what my life's like, and I know it's predictable, and if I just do it this way, it'll be consistently the way I know it to be. Now, sure, I might not be able to say the big yes fully. I might not be able to really step into this expansive expression in the world, but at least I feel safe. And the ego's number one job is to create and maintain a consistent sense of identity, A, and B, keep you safe, right? That's his job. And so the surrender piece feels completely contrary to safety when the trust isn't fully dialed in. Whew. When we move into surrender, it requires us to listen for the what. What am I meant to do? Right? But the how often shows up step by step. Right? You might have a picture of what the big thing, oh, Jeffrey, you're meant to be doing these monthly talks. They're meant to be on more of the spiritual deep dive stuff, less the marketing stuff. Oh, okay. That's the general what. I see the picture. I see the vision. But the how comes just that step by step by step thing. Not long ago, my guidance said to me, Jeffrey, your job is not to open the doors. Your job is only to walk through them. And that, to me, is that surrender journey. I'm just walking through life, looking for where the doors are opening and then walking through them. That's it, right? But if I don't trust myself, I won't trust that it's the right door. I won't trust that it will stay open without smacking me on the butt as I walk through it, right? I'll move into surrender and then go into fear, and then move into surrender and go into fear. And that's what a lot of us do with our spiritual guidance or our sense of calling is we're kind of like a sea creature, you know, moving with the ebbs and flows, rather than just being able to stay open, right? But when we move more and more into that place of relationship with the divine in surrender, that's when we have the potential to really step into holy power. Now, let me talk about relationship with the divine in surrender before I go to the holy power piece. Part of the issue with surrender, in my experience, is that the way we hold the relationship with the divine and what surrender means doesn't work for us. So, especially if you've come from a religious background, or a Judeo-Christian background especially. Because the idea of surrender is, I surrender all, I give it all, right? Here's all my possessions, just tell me where to go, tell me what to do. And certainly that is a path, but I don't think it's the only path. Part of what my buddy Tim talks about is this co-creative relationship with the divine, where you become partners with the voice of the universe and get to say yes and no and under which conditions. So for example, a few years ago after I'd moved to LA and I was like, oh, things are changing. Like I feel the heat up. Like, oh, the last decade was the prep and now we're moving into execution and expansion. And that's certainly been true if I look at my life in the last 2 years. Oof. But I said, I'm a yes, I'm in, but I won't do it alone. Right? And I won't do it without a romantic partner by my side. Like, I'm a support for a lot of people in this world. And I just need my guy to come home to, right? And that was a condition. That was a line I put in the sand. And sure enough, about 7.5 months ago, I met Pete, and he's a rock. And so that's that more co-creative relationship with the divine, which I think is a very empowering way to be in relationship with surrender. Because sometimes we do have needs, and to pretend that we don't is juvenile. And so rather than just like, I did hear a story a few, maybe 5, 6 years back of a friend that met some woman at a coffee shop in Berkeley who was doing the massive surrender version, where she had given everything up and she did not have a home or any possessions and just listened, where am I supposed to go today? And they'd be like, go to this coffee shop. And she would go and she would meet someone and they'd have this amazing relationship. She'd end up living with him for 3 months and then she'd move on, right? And that was her life. So that's one version. But for most of us, we're not going to do that, right? We're just not gonna. So then we have to have a new relationship with the divine that makes surrender make sense. And to me, that is this co-creative relationship with the divine where we say, okay, let's play together. And I'm saying yes, and I might have some conditions around my yes. But it's still my yes, right? So, for example, if I go camping, I'll go camping, but it needs to be glamping. There needs to be some creature comforts, and I need some good coffee. You know, those are my conditions for camping. Not that I camp much, but Siddiqui knows. So that's surrender. And that's when we deeply trust ourselves, and even our yes and no with the divine, such that we can open up and listen and say authentic yeses without reneging and without doing the little crustacean dance, but just staying in the game. Oh, what is it? Okay. And then the how is revealed as you walk through the doorways. Again, not your job to open the doorways, just your job to walk through. And the how is always revealed on the other side of the doorway. Always, 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 always. So in order to walk through the door, we have to know, is it true for me? Is it the true voice, and is it true for me? Okay, I'll walk through, and then the universe opens up and the how is revealed. And that's when we really can start stepping into power, because we trust ourselves, we trust the voice of the universe, and between those two things, we know who to trust and when to trust them, and under which conditions to trust them. And because we're listening and listening and listening for what we're meant to do, and the how is being revealed, simply acting on it then becomes an expression of power. So if we go back to the definition of holy power, the complete expression of divine truth in real time without hesitation, manipulation, or control. Only in that place, as we've moved from the anger and self-inflicted rage and resentment and self-betrayal into trust, which is sometimes we have to cut the cord with external things and do that external form of purposeful betrayal, into surrender, where we're able to listen and act and listen and act. Well, then we move into this place where we say, okay, we can let it rip, right? We can let the guardrails off and let this sucker go. Because we now trust the universe, and we trust ourselves. And even the anger and resentment is often trusting ourselves with others and what we're a yes and a no to there, right? And when we have that, then we know that our own level of trust, our own authority, our own sovereignty is the safety mechanism for speed. Because ultimately, to me, in this power arena is where the universe says, do this, and you say, okay, and do this, okay, do this, okay, and then you're just like, let it flow through me, let it go, let this sucker rip. A complete expression of divine truth in real time, and I don't need to anymore hesitate on it. I don't know if I trust it, can I do it, can I go there? That's the hesitation, right? I don't have to manipulate it. Have you ever done this one? You hear what you're meant to say to someone, but you rephrase it politely so that they don't get upset. Ever done that one, right? That's manipulation. Or hear what you're meant to be doing and in terms of an expression in the world, and you do this variation on a theme that looks like you're doing the real thing, but you know you're not, right? Manipulation. All these ways we restructure the truth to make it more palatable or acceptable or feel more safe. No longer have to do that. Hesitation, manipulation, control. Sit on it. I won't go, right? And that's that adolescent. No longer have to do that either. Control all the outcomes. Not actually interested in control very much anymore in this place. Not even really part of the vocabulary. Not really necessary, because the safety comes from the level of trust you have in yourself and in the universe. The safety does not come from artificially trying to control a circumstance. And when you're in that place, you can let the sucker rip, right? And I think that, to me, is this dance of like, how much can I let flow through? How fast can I go? Like, how much of the dance can I be in relationship with, right? How much can I be a full yes? And that, to me, is the dance. It's not necessarily the single destination to try to get into and stay into. Sure, maybe we'd call that enlightenment. But until then, it's the dance. It's the exploration. It's the, oh, look at that. I have some resentment. Ooh, fun. Right? Let me dig into that. Oh, I have terror around where I plug in and what I say yes to. Cool, let me do that. Right? Like where are the where are the tethers that are still saying, no, hold on, don't go so fast. It's going to get out of control. It's going to get wobbly. And then the house of cards is going to fall. Right? And I think that is the place where we're continually asked to explore. Right? To put on our explorer's hat and go spelunking and find where those threads and tethers live. Good. Okay, they're saying one more thing. We'll see what some questions are and whatnot. Each thread and tether saying, nope, don't trust, don't go so fast, there's only so far you can explore, right? The little kid at Disney, like, with the little kid leash on. It's like there's so much we can do. Each of us kind of have this sandbox that we feel safe exploring in. And we're like, look at all that I'm doing in my sandbox, right? But then there's places where it's like, oh, if we get too far, we get caught. And what they're saying is that each one of those is an invitation to explore trust. Because there's a relationship between trust and safety, trust and control. So I don't trust that if I keep going, I'll be safe, right? Now, there's a time for that as a kid. You know, I had this memory this morning when I was a kid. I liked to wander. I liked to explore. And we were at the mall, and I went exploring. And you know those big round things with dresses hanging on them, right? Those, right? I went under one and fell asleep. And they couldn't find me for like 2 hours. Of course, combing with the mall security and the police until some lady was like shopping and like, what's this? A small child. Right? So there's a time and a place to be tethered, you know, as a child. But at this point, the spiritual adulthood is the invitation to find those places where we unconsciously kept the tether on. And look at it from the lens of safety and security and how that relates to self-trust. Because it invariably is, if I go further than that, I get scared because I don't trust that I'll be safe. And I don't have the mechanisms to keep myself safe out there. Cool? Okay. Well, that was fun. It's so funny. Sometimes I'll lead up to one of these talks and I'll be like, I have no idea what I'm going to say. And I'll go into my brain, and I even did like a mind map with power in the middle. And of course, then I left the mind map at home because the divine for me is always like, no, that's not what these nights are for. It's not to explore what you already know or what we collectively already know. It's to explore what's beyond the known, right? Outside of the sandbox. Okay. So I want to hear from live streamers. How you doing, live streamers? What questions do you have? We'll check in with Siddiqui and see if there's any themes she's hearing, and then we'll see what questions or what's bubbling for you in the room, and we'll maybe do another hot seat or two. So how are we doing in live stream land?
It's pretty quiet.
All right.
They're really taking it in. They're wrapped in attention. But someone did have a question.
Yeah.
What questions can you ask yourself to start funneling anger towards uncovering your purpose, truth, or what you've been holding back about your desires?
That is a rich question. That's really good. So the place that I would recommend looking is self-betrayal. And what I mean by self-betrayal is when you say yes to something you're not a full yes to. Like, sometimes it's really subtle. Hey, why don't we go to this restaurant tonight? And your gut's like, I don't want to eat there. And what comes out of your mouth is, okay, right? That's a little piece of self-betrayal. Or this one, a client calls you up and has to reschedule, and the only time is a time when you said to yourself you're not working. Maybe you have morning practices for your health and well-being until 9 a.m. and they need an 8 a.m. one. And something in your gut says, no, that's my time. But you're trying to be a good consultant or coach or support person, and you say yes, right? My trainer a couple weeks ago, I came in to work with him. I'm normally his last person on Fridays, and then he goes skydiving every weekend. Right? He's done like 200 some odd hours of skydiving. And he and I are buds. I like my trainer, and he likes me. And he's like, oh man, I told somebody they could come out in after you. He's like, I've just been bummed this whole morning. He's like, normally I like have this last client and I really dig him, me, and then I go skydiving. And now I have this guy and I don't like he's not my most fun client ever. And like it's an hour after a normal leave and I'm just a little like, Urgh. And I'm like, okay, self-betrayal, right? When people have trying to lose weight, and you say you're going to eat a certain way, but then the cupcakes come out, and I'll just have one, or whatever, right? These little bites of self-betrayal, where you already said I'm going to be a certain way, and then you act another way, and it erodes trust in self, and can often produce anger and self-resentment. And then, of course, with other people in relationships, anytime we want to people please, anytime we want to stay out of conflict. Any conflict avoidant people here? Yep, I think I'm a recovering conflict avoidant. It still feels, but I do it now. Those are the places where we get pissed, we get resentful, we get angry. And over time, if it happens again and again and again, it can move into rage, whether that rage is expressed directly or not. And that rage can even turn into physical illness and dysfunction as a place to get expressed. What they're telling me right now is that sometimes when people have cancer, it's a form of rage going unexpressed because it's the cells literally fighting against you. So what I would look at is do an integrity inventory. So we'll go back here, stage 1. This is a place as a tool to do an integrity inventory, which is where are you saying yes to things you're a no to? Where are you behaving in a way that's out of integrity with how you want to live? Where have you made decisions about how you're going to live that you're not showing up to? What are relationships you're in that no longer serve you, but you haven't cut them off yet? And not as a place of self-flagellation. Yes? Like it's coming out and I don't know if it's right. Not as a place to beat yourself up, but just as a place to start to be honest, right? And to me, whenever I do this, the first thing I have to do is first be honest about what's going on, and then secondly, get honest about what I'm actually willing to be a yes to and show up to. So for example, if you say like, I'm going to meditate every day, but you actually aren't willing to do that yet, then don't make that commitment to yourself. Just because you should, because you think you should. If you're not really ready to be like, I'm a hell yeah to that, then be a hell no, right? It's a radical thing to do, especially in personal development junkies where there's all this stuff we should do to be on a consciousness path and so forth. So I would do an integrity inventory. What are all your yeses? What are all your no's? And where are you saying yes to your no's and no's to your yeses? Right? And that can take some time, especially getting your yeses list, because a lot of us don't actually know what we want. But that's the place I would start. And then just to peel it back and go like, what's the bare minimum that I can say yes to and actually show up to? Right? To rebuild that level of self-trust and self-integrity, that muscle. So that's the place I'd start there. The other thing I would add there is you may have to do a forgiveness process because from self-betrayal or feeling betrayed by others and that whole lot. There's a lot of material about betrayal, but to me there's a lot of relationship between betrayal and grief. So one piece of material I would recommend there is something called the Grief Recovery Handbook. It's a little book. It's a handbook for grief. But you can also grieve parts of yourself and grieve old ways of being, which is kind of neat. So that's what I do there as a tool set. Then when I go into this place, which is the trust piece, if that was anger and this is trust, to me, that's a lot about, this place is a lot about where are you a yes to your no's. This place is a lot about where are you no to your yes. So the anger is about where you're saying yes to what you're a no to. I'm pissed that I did that. But the self-trust is built in actually finding what you're a yes to, that you're actually saying no, where you're denying what's true for yourself. And that's about knowing who gets to be in your life, under which conditions, which kind of clients get to be in your practice, what kind of exercise feels most delightful to you, you know? Like where are your, like what's the life you want to be living and the life that feels true? What are your yeses? And then looking at where are you denying yourself? Where are you a no to your yeses? And that's sort of the second piece of the integrity cleanup, if you will, or restructuring life. And the second thing there is just to practice checking in. What's true? What's true? What's true? Remember when I started dating Pete? He wasn't feeling well, and we had these plans with some of his friends, and he was kind of on the fence about whether he was going to go or not. And if he wasn't going to go, I was actually going to call up Siddiqui and go to a movie with her. And we took a walk in the morning, and I was like, he was like hemming and hawing, and I was like, "What does your gut say? Are you meant to go out tonight?" He goes, "No." I said, "All right, cool." Right? Called up Siddiqui, made plans. Hours later, he's like, "So, what do you think about tonight?" I was like, "Wait, what?" I already made plans. I thought the decision was made. He's like, "Oh, you did?" It's like, "Yeah, I asked you what your gut said, and you said no." Now, in my world, gut says no, it's a no, right? Because that's a practiced thing for me. I learned in that moment, like, oh, I've got to check in, like, okay, gut says no, now what's your decision, right? So, and it's been interesting in the many months since how that's shifted for him. It's been very cool. But that's that piece of like knowing what's true and then acting on what's true, and knowing what's true and acting on what's true. And oftentimes that's where we begin to make irrational decisions that are purposeful. Where what feels true wouldn't necessarily make sense to anybody else, but it's still true, right? You know, or have you ever had an opportunity to buy something that's like a really good deal and it makes sense and you can see how it would work in your life, but for whatever reason your gut's like, no, not supposed to do that. Anybody ever had that one? Yeah. So like, and there's times when we still do the purchase because our mind overrides our truth. And then there's times when we learn like, oh, I'm just going to walk away. For whatever reason, I don't know why, but I'm not supposed to do this venture or go down this path or buy this thing. So that's what we practice in this second phase, is first knowing what our yeses are and where we're no to our yes, and then practice showing up to ourselves by continuing to saying yes to what's true. That's the practice in this second phase. The surrender phase, the third phase, the practice there is listening. 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 It's so often, I have this prayer practice every morning in the shower. And it's my daily act of surrender. And I say, praying the prayer of yes today, what have I prayed yes to? Essentially like, I've already said yes, now tell me what I just said yes to. Right? That's my daily act of surrender. And often, not always, but often, I'll hear that song from Dreamgirls, listen to the sound within my voice. You know that song? Listen. Now I'm not sounding so good, but anyway, it's that listen, 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 listen. And it's the recurring call to practice surrender. Because we can't surrender if we don't know what we're surrendering to. Right? Oftentimes we go to pretend, we go to try to surrender, and what happens is our brain moves into overdrive and we try to figure it out. Right? And it's funny when I'm coaching people, I'll be like, so what does this voice say? Or what does your guidance say? Or whatever. And immediately a rational voice will come and fill in the blank. I'm like, no, I didn't ask that question. Okay, that's great. We'll get to your rational mind. We'll see what it says. But that's not what I'm looking for in this moment. And they'll have to stop and breathe and pause and go, oh, yeah, what I actually hear is this. When I started coaching, I remember I would hear stuff and I'd see pictures and I didn't know what to do with it at first. But then I learned to just start to blurt. I remember having this woman and I kept seeing this red dress. And we're kind of going around and around a little bit in this session. And I was like, all right, I keep seeing this red dress. Like, what's up with the red dress? And she was like, oh, when I was in 7th grade, I had this red dress and blah, 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 blah. And it just like opened up the whole thing, right? And it was just like, all right, this doesn't make sense to me. It's not a rational thing for me, but it's what's showing up. And I'm going to trust it and blurt. And oftentimes the surrender thing after the listening is action. And sometimes that action is blurting, right? Saying something, making it a verbal declaration. And that's often where it like, I have no idea if this is going to make sense. For me, it's taken many years of now I'm like, I tell my clients when we start, I'm like, look, I'm very declarative. I get stuff, I'm going to blurt. It's not true with a capital T at all. It's only true if it lands for you. But I'm just going to blurt. And so I take myself off the hook and give myself full permission to just like listen and blurt and listen and blurt. And it's amazing. You know, I taught a workshop a couple months ago and I was coaching this woman. I was like, your dad was in the military, yeah? And she's like, yeah, how did you know? I'm like, didn't know, I just heard it, right? And of course that like opened everything up. So that's the third place, is this divine listening and being willing to speak it if that's what's called for. Again, that piece of simply saying yes without knowing the how, right? That's what happens. And the second piece in this third area of surrender is being clear about the conditions under which you will continue to say yes. That's often where people get a little screwed up around the surrender thing. It feels like, oh, I'll just take off all, I'll give you everything, right? Like, Skivvies too? Okay. You know, and that's not really what's required in my experience. My experience is that what's being asked for is a relationship, and to show up to the relationship. And sometimes in relationships, just like human relationships, we have conditions, right? When you're in, like, a condition for me in my relationships is I'm a big integrity guy. And so you do what you say, and you show up when you say you're going to show up. And if, you know, every now and again something happens, sure. But if it happens repeatedly, you aren't in my life. So those are conditions I have for human relationships. Well, the same thing is true in this surrender relationship. Under which conditions am I willing to stay in this dance? Like I said, for me, having someone by my side was a big requirement. Not my only one, but one of them. So that's the piece. It's listening and acting, one thing. And the other thing, understanding the conditions for that relationship that are true for you. Which then allows us to move into this fourth quadrant of power, of holy power, which is requires the listening, requires the trust, right? Requires everything built to there so that we can take the tethers off. And here the job is to walk through the doors. Walk through the doors, walk through the doors. Not your job to open them, just your job to walk through them. And on the other side, to move into that place of discovery of, oh, what's there that's been waiting for me? You know, and to build on it and to say yes. And this is oftentimes the place where you make the most irrational decisions publicly, right? Where what you do and why you do it doesn't make any sense. I've told this story before, but when I moved to LA, you know, I was told to move here, and I kept being told, like, someone's just going to show up into your pathway and land on your doorstep and invite you to live with them. And I was like, oh, that's the strategy for moving to LA? And it was like, yep. I'm like, okay. Right? And sure enough, it happened. You know, but like, that's the, like, oh, it's just my job to walk through, to go, yes, I'm moving to LA. And I'm moving to LA by November 1st. I moved here on October 26th, by the way, 2013. But November 1st was my date, right? And that's the, like, yes to walking through the doorways and then being in that place of wonder about the how. You know? And then when the how shows up, show up to it, right? This is not about, like, la-di-da-di-da, airy-fairy. That's not the game I'm playing. But the how that's on the other side of those doorways is always so much more expansive and so much more interesting than how I could have ever dreamed up. Always. Always, 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 always. And then lastly in that place is to continue to fine-tune by finding those little tethers that say, can't walk through that doorway, can't go that far. And find, it's like you can play them, like you can pluck them like a string. And each one has a different tune or frequency where there's still a piece where you maybe don't trust yourself or others or the voice of the divine, however you name that. And that's an invitation to just look and see what's there and shore that up. Cool? Okay, good. Questions. Here's what I'm interested in. Less than questions. I'm more interested in, like, what's stirring? How is this occurring for you?
I was thinking of 30 good reasons why I shouldn't raise my hand. Yeah, what's stirring for me is the piece around anger really.
Yeah.
Connected for me, and that's been something that's been up, and it's I just had this insight just a few moments before you paused just there. and it's like the stuff that I'm working with is so pre-verbal. And as I've been sitting with the idea of, not even just with the idea, but kind of like sitting in this experience of whatever's going on inside of me and whatever's getting, bubbling up around anger, the thing that kept popping in my head is it feels like a 1 month old, like the consciousness of a 1 month old.
Okay, good. I'm going to hop in.
All right.
Keep the mic for a minute. This is really good. Because what I said around this anger piece is about self-betrayal and so forth, which is kind of verbal, right? Not pre-verbal. And, if you were born to a crack addict mother or born into an experience that feels like you are the victim, you didn't choose it, you didn't do a self-betrayal thing that created a circumstance that made you upset or whatever, you're born into it. This is a perspective. I don't need it to be true with a capital T for anybody, but it's a perspective I want to invite you to try on. So as you know, because you've been here before, I look at our woundings as whole and complete and perfect and elegant, like exquisite, because like that slingshot, however you pull that rock back dictates precisely how it's going to move forward in the world. So our wounding directly paves this path for the trajectory of our development. And from a spiritual context, one way to hold, especially pre-verbal wounding, is that at a spiritual level, you chose it. Not at a human level at all. At all. But at a higher level of consciousness, there's some part of you that said, I want to come in and I need this experience to send me that way because that's my purpose. Right? And so often the pre-verbal wounds is like anger at God, anger at whoever you were wounded at the hands of, anger at the situation, and these angry at things that it feels like you have no control over, which is the ultimate victimization feeling, right? And I want to invite, not as a truth, but as a potential perspective, that the higher consciousness of you said, I need to come in through that gateway, through that portal. And without it, I wouldn't be on path with everything I need to learn and grow and develop to be in service to the work I'm destined to do in this lifetime. And so then there's the opportunity for forgiveness. Right? Blaming yourself for maybe making that choice spiritually, and forgiveness of the circumstance or those that you were at the hands of in the wounding. Cool?
Yeah, and again, it's like so much of it is I'm starting to be able to kind of pin it down to certain people, certain energetic dynamics and stuff like that. But I just totally lost my thought.
It's all right.
Maybe I wasn't supposed to say anymore.
Talk to me afterwards. There is a visualization I have that I think would be really cool for you. So just talk to me and I'll have my assistant send it to you.
Thanks.
You got it. We'll just go down the line.
So with these four big points, where do those fit in mystery? What is required in each one? I want to be in mystery. Do some of these need to be? Do I need to step into one to another to be in mystery?
First, great. Love the question, and I want to encourage you to be interested in mystery and vision. So for those that were here last month, I talked about these 4 quadrants of power, I guess, and there was the low masculine and low feminine and high masculine and high feminine. Low masculine is the victimizer, low feminine is the victimized. High feminine is mystery, and high masculine is vision. And so the opportunity when we're in victim or victimization is to move into mystery where we listen, and then things start to emerge, and then we move into vision to put form to them and bring them into the world. And that dance between mystery and vision and mystery and vision. And I think those of us that are seeker types tend to be a bit more like, but the mystery! And I want to say yes, and the vision, right? So that's the first piece. Remind me of the question now.
So, like, does anger have to be cleared before we go, and we have to be in certain steps to go into mystery?
No. Mystery is available always. Always, always, always. So we can be in the anger and then we can move into listening. So mystery and listening, which is more the third quadrant, but listening is available everywhere, right? So when I'm angry sometimes, right, and when I find some aspect of myself I'm working on, sometimes I'll dialogue with my guidance and like, what's this really about? What's the deeper meaning behind this? I know I have my personality stuff going on and I'm, but like what's really cooking, And I'll often get this insight that's like, whoa, never heard that before, right? So, and great, is there another way I should move forward with this vision? And then I find a whole new path to navigate the anger or the rage or the resentment or whatever, because my brain isn't just trying to figure it out and hash it out, right? So you can always move into mystery. Mystery is a constant invitation. And then in the trust piece, that's where we can start to go, what's true, and listen at the deepest levels. Right? And when what's true doesn't even make sense, that's really mysterious. Right? And so there's mystery there. And then vision. And of course, in the surrender piece, that is the ultimate invitation to mystery of, I'm going to listen, and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to listen. And I'm not going to concern myself much with the how. Not my job. Just listen. And that, to me, the surrender piece is where, really, to me, in my experience, where you have the opportunity to develop a love relationship with the voice of the divine. That deep communion, where the mystery of life is so sweet, and that's an invitation there. And then the mystery around power is like, I'll tell you, a couple years ago, actually, this is when I turned 40, I think. I woke up one Saturday and had nothing going on, and had a really beautiful cup of coffee and got in bed. And I'm like, I'm just going to check in with the gang, right? And so I'm like, hey gang, got anything? And I do it on the computer, a journal thing, right? Writing back and forth. And it's like, okay, anything else? Okay, anything else? Right, and like 2 hours later I come up for air. But a big part of that was where they were saying, look, Jeffrey, you spent the first 40 years learning from the gunk. Now it's time to learn from the glory. How good can you stand it? How much can you let in? How much can you revel in how sweet and amazing this is and let it flow through you, right? And so that was the mystery around this power thing of like, you know, look, you don't know light until you know dark. You don't know beautiful until you know ugly. You don't know up till you know down. Like you spent the first 40 years really learning from the gunk. Awesome, good job. You got in there. Now, time to learn from the glory. Right? And that's a piece of mystery that to me is centered in the power place. Because like, to me, so much of this power place is about becoming a more and more solid vessel. A lot of the things around power where we get really queasy in this fourth arena is about where our vessel doesn't have integrity, right? And you see, like, in movies, like spaceships, where they're going through, like, Deep Space Nine or whatever, and, like, the bolts start to come undone and everything starts to wobble, and, like, they're pushing the integrity of the ship, right? Or if you think about a ship in water, and you see those, like, where it's in a deep icebreaker, right? And, like, it needs to be a ship with tons of integrity to be an icebreaker, or it will just fall apart. And so the places where we often get scared in the power place is where the vessel doesn't have integrity, which is why we start with, what are you saying yes to that you're actually no to? And then we go to, what are you a yes to that you've actually been saying no to, right? This whole thing, are you listening and acting and listening and acting and listening and acting? It's all been designed to build the integrity of the vessel such that more and more can flow through you without the vessel collapsing, right? That's what that whole journey is for, so we can be in this place and go, let it rip. Like, this is a solid vessel. A lot can flow through this sucker, right? And that's the place of mystery of how good can I stand it? How much can I let it flow through? And then moving into vision again. Cool?
Thank you.
Good. So we will talk afterwards. We're at time. I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you. First of all, I just got to say thank you. I'm always wowed by what comes through and how it comes through, and I can never do it alone. I'll tell you, sitting at home at my desk, this stuff doesn't happen, right? It requires us. I'm very responsive. So it's your questions and your inquiry and your energetic field that's pulling this out through me. So first I just want to say thank you. It's such a pleasure and privilege. Then I have just a couple of announcements. One very cool announcement. I'll get to that in a minute. The first one is we always like to hear how this landed for you and get your feedback. So in just a moment, we'll pass out a few feedback forms. And again, how did this work for you? Is there anything you'd like to see in the future or see different? Love to know that. Live streamers, you can go to tribalmarketing.biz/feedback and share feedback there. I actually looked through some just the other day. It was super helpful. Thank you. Keep it coming. tribalmarketing.biz/feedback. On the back of that form, if you're interested in talking with me about the work I do in tribal marketing or my private consulting, you can fill out that form, and we'll look that over, and if it looks like we could be a fit for some work together, our team will be in touch and schedule a phone call. I will just say two things there. The primary two things we do in the JVD world is a program called Tribal Marketing, which is a 3-month deep dive into really getting you on the 1 square inch in the market that you can drill a mile deep and really expand your reach and influence in the world. So that's one way I've served people, and then I also work with a select group of people privately often in 3 to 6 month deep dives. And that's usually when there is a next level of leadership or a next expression of your work in the world that wants to emerge. So those are the two opportunities there. That's on the back of the sheet. And if you're live streaming, you can go to tribalmarketing.biz/welcome. Tribalmarketing.biz/welcome. So those are those two pieces. And then the last announcement is the next third Thursday. These are the third Thursday of every month. The next third Thursday is July 20, which happens to be my birthday. Happy birthday! Normally, I'm one of these people that like never works on my birthday, but this doesn't actually feel like work. And I just am in the middle of wrapping up a new album, EP, that I've been writing and recording with the brothers Corin. And they just confirmed yesterday that they can be here. So the plan, I got to square this all up yet, but the plan is that July 20 is going to be a concert. Now, the brothers Corin are amazing. Like, they've toured internationally and opened for Coldplay and Pink around the globe. They're freaking brilliant and beautiful, beautiful beings. So I believe that will be a pretty packed event because a lot of my clan will want to be in the house for that one. So we will make that announcement official probably in the next week. And for that one, I would recommend registering ahead of time and registering early, because this room only holds so many, and there's a chance we will have to turn people away. So that'll be really, really, really fun. It's been a really cool experience to find this new expression as a singer, which I've been on the side for a long time, but so that'll be cool. Anything else? Yes, Siddiqui.
Will that be live streamed?
Yes. That will be, I'm 99% sure it will be. Again, I'm just in the middle of squaring away all the details, so I'm pretty darn sure, let me say that. And I just want to leave you with this. There is a benevolence in this world, a grace in this world that is always flowing. It's a river that never ends. And as it relates to trust and surrender and power and even anger, the invitation is to drink from this river, to drink from the well of grace. To me, grace is receiving benefit that we did not work to earn. And so there always is, in my old tradition, there is a song, there is a balm in Gilead. There is this balm, this grace that I believe is always available to us. And it requires just one thing, and that is to ask and surrender and open to it and receive it. Okay, maybe those were 4 things. But that is my greatest hope in this discussion, that throughout this entire journey, to remember that grace is always there to be the wellspring supporting the entire journey. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
And when you guys finish those forms, you can just leave them on the desk on the way out. Yeah, feel free to hang